Well, welcome back, everybody. It's the top of the hour here, and I'm very pleased to be back with you and kicking this session off here. I'd like to just very briefly introduce to you Benjamin Lis, who is going to speak to us this afternoon about creating email archives from PDFs, the COVID-19 corpus. And I'm really excited about this project because both the direct connection over to, an issue that obviously has affected all of our lives deeply and in many negative ways, but at an institution that's really well placed to preserve history out of journalists' interactions around email records, which have played into some larger projects that they have there at Columbia to document COVID-19. And also just really interested in the project because, what Ben is doing is something that's a little bit different than most of us in the archives community do. They're dealing with PDFs that are received through Freedom of Information Act requests as opposed to original source files, and then really thinking deeply about how to preserve those and provide access to them and have access to a wonderful platform that they've been themselves developing for many years and partnerships. So anyway, I won't delay things too much further. I just want to point out briefly that Ben is a data engineer at Columbia University's History Lab and has been responsible there for the development of this infrastructure and software as part of our EABCC regrant project here that we provided to Columbia. We're very happy to do. And he'll be discussing that in this session. Also, as a side note, would just point out that Ben is also a very active member of the EA PDF Liaison Working Group, which is a partnership on a different grant project with the PDF Association. And lots of interesting work going on there tomorrow, which we'll tell you a little bit more about tomorrow, but just very, very pleased to welcome Ben. And I'll turn things over to you here and go off camera again.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris, for that introduction. Just want to check the volume, and you can see both a slide viewer and an internet browser in the background. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, it's fantastic. Good. It's all good.
Okay, great. Because I'm going to be switching back and forth throughout this presentation. So this is an awardee project briefing, as Chris points out, about some of the technical work that we've done on a COVID-19 corpus of FOIA documents. And, I'm saying this on behalf of myself, but on behalf of my entire group at the History Lab, a big thanks to EABCC and the Mellon Foundation for this work. It really laid the foundation for some interesting work that we've been able to expand upon even beyond the initial grant that we got in the first round of awards from EABCC. So thank you. The slides are up on the website for the event, for the conference. I also have them in a GitHub repository as well. Sorry, I got them up there a little bit late today, so if you looked in the morning, you wouldn't have saw them, but they're there now. I also, like Catherine before me, have a disclaimer slide. It's not as witty as hers, but I just want to point out up front, I'm not an archivist. I'm not trained as an archivist, nor am I a historian or trained as a historian. I have tremendous respect for both professions, and I do develop software and tools that are used by historians and archivists. And I just want to say that up front so that your time is very valuable. If you're watching this presentation, I would like to set expectations. This is going to be more about the software side and more about the product we're building, because that's what I can speak to more authoritatively. The agenda for the talk, well, we're going to start off with some background just to level set. Then we'll go into the software that we built as part of the project, and then talk about some follow-on work, some of which has progressed already, but some of which is still still ahead of us. And then we'll just wrap it up with questions and discussions from you, the audience. So going on to background, first, just a little bit about the History Lab, the organization that I work for at Columbia. You can see here, I've just clicked from the link to our homepage, right? Because it does such a good job of summarizing what it is that we're about, right? It's really about applying the techniques of data science to history, right? And turning documents into data and developing tools to explore history. And in my role there, I'm as was pointed out, I'm the data engineer. So I do a lot of the infrastructure work, the plumbing, and the software development. You can see here that I would say, I guess the best way to say it is, historically speaking, we've been focused on collections in the realm of international relations and U.S. foreign policy. And as part of that work, we've built a very large database of declassified documents that we call the FOIA archive. And you can see here, if you're at all interested, we, Matt Connolly, our principal investigator, my boss, got Sam Waterstone to do a little YouTube video. It's about a minute or two that really goes into the motivation for the founding of the History Lab. But one of the things that Matt has got us involved in the past couple of years, and that the EABCC grant was fundamental in starting, really, was this notion of writing the history of COVID-19 and making sure that all the documents that have been made available, particularly under public record requests or FOIA requests, are cared for appropriately and made available to researchers in public health, to historians, and to the extent possible to the general public, so that we can be better prepared the next time and learn from this experience, right? And so that's us at the History Lab. In terms of what we've done is in emails, Chris pointed out that I'm on the working group. I really think that he was he was overly generous in terms of my contributions. I am a regular attendee, and I do ask questions when I don't understand something, right? But I will say my experience on the working group is one really where I've learned a tremendous amount, both from the archivists who are participating in the working group, as well as the PDF experts who have been, working with PDF for decades, right? I'll also point out that, Matt has worked with Chris on the task force that Chris chaired that produced the Future of Emails Archives report, right? Which I think is probably set the agenda. I would imagine it's a way to characterize it for the work that's being done in EABCC. And then in terms of work we've actually done, because of our interest in international relations and U.S. foreign policy, when the Hillary Clinton emails were released by the State Department, this is before my time at the History Lab. I joined it in 2019. And this work was done, in 2016, 17, I do believe. But if you're interested in work we did around the processing of that collection and applying techniques of data science to that collection, I've included the link in the slide that will bring you to this page that will describe that further. So that's background on what we've done with emails previously. And just to level set, I have a slide here of FOIA. It stands for Freedom of Information Act. That's probably most on the webinar know. It's a federal law here in the United States requiring full or partial disclosure of U.S. government documents. There are in the individual states in the United States. There are also the equivalent of FOIA, usually called sunshine laws, state and local equivalents. And you'll hear the terms used of FOIA, in terms of applying for making a records request, or FOIAing, right, which just describes the process of requesting government documents. I understand that this is a very U.S. Focused slide. I know that just from watching the other presentations, there is a good deal of international representation on the call, right? And I know that in established democracies around the world, there are the equivalent of FOIA or the public record laws. But for us, being U.S. focused here in this particular work, we'll use the term FOIA throughout. I was watching a presentation about a week ago from a historian by the name of Dan DeFrea, and he included this quote that was used when the actual act, the Freedom of Information Act, was signed into law in the mid 1960s by Lyndon Johnson. And I've basically said, oh, I should put this in my deck for my upcoming presentation on EEBCC, so that it really sums up the best summary I've seen as to why there is FOIA, right? And it says, a democracy works best when the people have all the information that the security of the nation permits. No one should be able to pull curtains of secrecy around decisions which can be revealed without injury to the public interest. Now, you can build collections effectively with FOIA documents. And I'd like to highlight to you a very excellent example of this. There was a project created by Derek Kravitz when he was at the Brown Institute for Media Innovation at Columbia Journalism School, called Documenting COVID-19. And you can see here, Documenting COVID-19 is a repository of searchable documents related to the COVID pandemic through FOIA and state open record laws, right? And they've put together a very nice website here. And perhaps more importantly than the nice website, there's been award-winning reporting, a good deal of award-winning reporting that was generated from these FOIA requests, right? I list them here. They're 2022 National Headliners Award, 2021 Sunshine Award, 2020 Free Speech and Open Government Award, and I think I don't think that's the extent of it. I just wanted the site to look up a few of them, and I've jotted them down here. But a really outstanding collection. Now, it's interesting because, as we like to say at the History Lab, journalists are the ones who write the first draft of history. And so when you see this collection, or you see other efforts on records requests, you do think of long-term preservation because you're archivists, right? And you do think the folks who have made these requests, they may be journalists, they may be from civic organizations, they have jobs that are not archivist jobs, right? And they may not be thinking, because it's not within their discipline to think so much about the long-term preservation aspect. So, well, I think the challenge is on the one hand, making sure that all these documents are retained for the long term, right? For learning purposes, for research purposes. Right? The other challenge is documenting process, right? How you process these documents. They have specific characteristics that we'll drill into. And I'm going to be focusing in this talk on the documenting process aspect. So let's dive in here. This is something, I think everybody is aware of on the Zoom, right? Your own institutions probably all have file formatting, preferred formats, and acceptable formats, right? And it may look like what I've listed here for both the National Archives in the US as well as the Library of Congress. And it highly reflects everything that I've seen in the conference so far, right? Where you have very heavy use of MBOX and PST for aggregated collections, right? And here I've just, NARA has actually preferred formats. Library of Congress does not, at least on their website, and I've included the links here, have a preferred format. But you can see the preferred formats here, and they're the formats that the presenters are largely working with. Right? But when we turn to FOIA documents and FOIA emails, what you'll find is, at least in our experience at the History Lab, my personal experience working through a lot of these files, is that the predominant format is PDF. Occasionally, you will see files released in PST, in MBOX as FOIA requests, but it definitely seems to be in the minority. So let's take a look at a PDF FOIA email example. And the one I'm highlighting here, and it's the one that we're going to come back to because we've actually done some work around it at the History Lab as part of the tools development that we've done under the grant, is around Anthony Fauci's emails. These were released under a FOIA that was made by Jason Leopold, who is a well-known journalist and especially well-known for his use of FOIA and public records requests. So let's take a look at this document. It's on a platform called Muckrock Document Cloud, right? Muckrock is the organization. Document Cloud is the platform for documents. You may be familiar with it if you're working in the area of open government records. You likely are. If you're interested in this area of FOIA documents, I highly recommend that you explore the Document Cloud platform. You have probably already been on the Document Cloud platform, even though you may not be entirely aware of it. If you've read, let's say, investigative journalism from ProPublica, and in the report, it includes a PDF of maybe an indictment or FOIA documents. Often those documents are hosted on the Document Cloud platform, even if they're embedded in a web page on the journalistic site where you're at. A few things I will want to highlight right off the top here is, FOIA email PDFs. They're pretty big, right? This one is 3,234 pages. Now, I would consider that, given my experience, I would call that large. I would not call that very large, though, right? You can see PDFs in the tens of thousands of pages. So here, if we look at the thumbnail, you get a little bit of a better idea. It goes on, and I could take the rest of the time up in my session just based on scrolling through that. If we just go back and look at the document, there's a couple other points that I would like to highlight. This document, as you look, and we'll just scroll down a bit, one thing you'll note is that it is redacted for PII, right? This is, I think, it's very well redacted, right? You're not going to find Dr. Fauci's cell phone number, right, or his email address in here, right? And this was redacted as part of the FOIA process. Not all documents that are released under FOIA are processed as carefully as this particular one was, and that's something we're going to talk about at the end of the session, and what we're doing at the History Lab about that. But you'll see here, you'll see all sorts of, having looked at this collection, all sorts of individuals here. You'll see Deborah Birx, who is the White House advisor, being CC'd. You'll see sometimes Fauci interacting with citizens, right, and with politicians to a limited degree, but with other scientific figures, a broad set of emails. But I think you've gotten a view of what it is we're facing when we try to process these sorts of documents. Now, there's something that I want to highlight, and it's I think probably, but maybe obvious to some on the call, but it's worth covering, right? For sure, and that is once the PDF goes to PDF, currently, right, with the current form of PDF that we have today, there are issues, right? You lose access to attachments, right? The structure, although you may be able to recreate it, which is part of what some of the work that we've done in our grant is about, right? But you've lost the structure, the email, the threads, and who's communicating with who, easy access to that metadata. You've lost that, right? And it's possible, if the document is actually scanned, you might think, oh, this is a born digital document. You would never encounter a scanned document, right? That might have bad OCR or no OCR at all. But there are cases, right? I think famously, when the Mueller report was first released by the Justice Department, the first iteration, if you go today, you'll find a very beautiful copy, highly redacted, but from a PDF perspective, a beautiful document. But it went through several iterations. In the initial iteration, if you review analysis done by the PDF Association, they report that initial version that went up the day the report was released was actually scanned twice, right? Some scanned when the report was released and then scanned after redactions were applied. And it made it difficult to recover all the information, even applying OCR. And also, this is not apt to be in PDFA, right? Which of course is important. I think compared to the stuff that I'm talking about above, there's other challenges, right? Beyond that. Now, I've knocked PDF a little bit, but I want to say, we've talked about the working group that Chris has put together. That working group is working to eliminate many, if not all, of these shortcomings that we're seeing in the PDF that you get today that has emails in it. It's a very sophisticated PDF implementation that is being developed as part of the working group. And I just encourage you to go check out Mike and Chris's talk, which is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time, just to learn more about the PDF email effort. But that will be the last I'll mention the PDF email, because I'll now go on finally to the software that we built with the grant, right? And probably obvious already with some of the things I've said, but just to make absolutely clear, right? Until we have something like PDF email or PDF mail, I should say, it will be better for archivists to use MBox or PSD or IMAP to do their work, right? Because of the issues that I've highlighted, they're lost on export to PDF. But our hypothesis here is that if those above options are unavailable, as they are in this case when we're looking at the Fauci emails, we think there's enough information in the email PDF to create a proxy of the original that allows you to do some processing, right? It's far from ideal, but it's better than nothing, and hopefully in the long term we won't have to deal with it at all, this problem, right? But this is the work that we're focused on, and I want to make absolutely clear that I'm not advocating the use of PDF versus a valid or preferred format today for email processing. So enough. That's a second disclaimer, kind of. So the utility that we developed, it's both a command line utility and Python library. It's called PDF to MBox. And it takes as input a PDF containing emails, and it processes those PDFs to recreate as best as it can, right, the structure of the emails in aggregate, right? And to reconstruct the email, if you will, in terms of its metadata and text, and then to output that to an mbox format, or alternatively a CSV file just containing the metadata. In terms of installing this, a couple of things to note. One is it's open source. It's distributed under the MIT license, and I include a link to the GitHub repo that has the code there. It does require Python 3.8 or higher. Now, Python 3.8 has been out about 4 years, right? So that is not too onerous a requirement. And also, too, it is available on PyPI. We went to the efforts to do that. Now, if you're a Python programmer, you'll know what PyPI is. But for those who are not, it's a mechanism that allows developers, open source developers, to easily distribute Python libraries to other Python users over the internet, right? And it's the leading way of doing that. And so that would mean that if you have a Python 3.8 or higher environment, you should just have a simple install process in that environment. You could just type pip install PDF to mbox, and you will get the software. I do want to highlight that even though it's packaged in Python, that if you want to use it as a command line utility, you don't have to be a Python programmer. As long as you have comfort at the command line, and as long as you can have a Python installation, you could just use this as a command line tool, right? Perfectly reasonable approach to using it, right? And there are different use cases. You could just, if you have a PDF in it's just one email in the PDF, of course it handles that. The more interesting case, and the case that you invariably will see in FOIA documents, is the case of aggregated emails that are put in a PDF. And this can also easily handle on the command line with the use within a bash script of a for loop. You could easily process multiple PDFs just using the command line tool, which you can see how you run it here. You type Python -m, because it's a module that you've installed with pip install, PDF to mbox, then your PDF file, and then your mbox output file. Now, there are a limited number of other command line options, right? One is what you would, kind of standards, things that you would see some help, right? If you need it. Version, I'll tell you the version that you're running. There is an override option for mbox, because the default behavior for mbox is as you're adding to an mbox file is to append to mbox. If you want to, destroy and overwrite the mbox, you have to choose to do that. And then if you want the CSV, excuse me, CSV, you have to specify that as an option. Now, if you are a Python programmer, or there's a Python programmer in your team, you could simply use this from within Python, right? If you'd like to integrate the functionality into some system you're building, by all means, go ahead and do so. The one thing that I will point out is that if you were to go down that route, it may be that you don't want the PDF to mbox functionality as much as you want the parser that parses the PDF emails. So that parser, which we've developed as part of the project, is also available as a standalone. It's called XMPDF, and I include it here. It's both, again, you could go to the GitHub repo, you can install it via PyPI as well. This XMPDF, actually, when you're using the command line version, or as long as you've pip installed PDF to mbox, this XMPDF is actually also installed behind the scenes. So it's not an additional thing that you need to do. However, again, if you're a programmer, or if you are a programmer, or if someone on your team was going to use this, they may just want to use XMPDF. Just want to highlight that. How it works. Okay, so it works on the text of the PDF, right? So it only uses text at this point, right? It doesn't use any, if you will, computer vision or visual clues on the email, other than the position of text within a page. So we take it to text, we find the email. The parser, as it exists today, and this is something that we are hoping to advance in the future. Right now, it is a rules based parser, right? So it looks for a header, and it has actually a fairly evolved set of rules for identifying elements in headers, because they will differ across emails. Email systems, right? And even sometimes within email systems, if you've done some specialized processing of your headers or set up special formatting for your headers. It works as a single pass, so it reads through the PDF document once, so that it only uses text. And really the notion here is underlying, if you were to look at the Python code, you would see it looks, it has objects where an email is just a header plus the body, and you have the standard metadata elements that are gathered and are available to you inside data structures inside Python, which then in turn get written out to Mbox if you're using the Mbox option, right? If you wanted to just access that data structure and do something else with it, you can do so with the code. Oops, what did I do? I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I just made a mistake here. Let's see. Where were we? Nope. Further ahead. Hold on. Apologies for that. Just a few caveats actually of working with it. It does work best with a standard email header. It works with a variety of email headers, right? It works, with what you'll see from, it looks like in the Fauci emails, looks like it came out of Outlook, right? Handles that very, very well, handles Gmail very well, handles other email systems output to PDF very well. But again, since it's rules based, if there's something that an email client or a configuration has been done to change from a standard email heading, it may have problems processing it, right? It currently assumes an email ends where a new email begins, right? If you look in detail at the Fauci PDF that we were looking at earlier, that is indeed the case, right? And it's indeed the case in many FOIA email PDFs that you will see. They are just emails, right? But that is not universally true. And sometimes you'll get a mix of emails, internal reports, PowerPoint slide decks, all sorts of things in one PDF. And right now, if those occur after an email, it considers those part of emails as a quasi attachment, right? That may not, that's a simplifying assumption, right? That may in fact be I actually think it is an oversimplifying assumption that we would probably look to enhance in future releases. There is also one other point. If you go ahead and install this, there are some OS level dependencies. That this is just a little note of what those dependencies are. You probably don't have to deal with it at all, but if you did encounter a problem, you can remember to come back and look at that. It's also in the GitHub repo. Let's take a look at where this fits in the overall process and some of the interesting stuff we've done outside of PDF to Mbox, right? How can you use this to build a corpus? How can you use this to build a corpus of the Fauci emails that we were looking at earlier, right? Well, step one, you could use this utility, and this is what we did do, right? To extract the email metadata in text, right? And then we database that metadata in text. And in our case, we use Postgres with a full text search capability enabled. And then we improve the discoverability by applying natural language processing techniques, right? This was not something I did, but my colleague Ray Hicks at the History Lab. You have NER, named entity recognition. So if in these emails, people are talking about a particular place, a particular organization, a particular person, we can highlight that and then make that available for searching, as you'll see in one moment, right? Additionally, we did topic modeling in order to cluster, potentially identify clusters of similar emails. And then on top of it, to make it accessible to all, we built a simple GUI. In our case, we used a framework a product called Streamlit, which is a very nice framework for developing what they would call data apps, or almost as if you've seen a Jupyter notebook, you could think of Jupyter notebooks, but maybe not everybody would be comfortable using a Jupyter notebook. Can you actually just do this as an app? And this is really what Streamlit allows you to do in a very nice way. So let's actually take a look at this. This is available on the History Lab website. So let's go and look at our archive, COVID-19 archive prototype, right? So you can see, right off the bat here, one of the things that it allows you to do once you process that PDF, right? You can see patterns in email distribution, right? That are much harder to see when you're looking at thousands of 3,500 page PDF. You can see where the bursts were in email activity and Dr. Fauci's emails. And again, here we go with the named entity recognition, right? You can look here and you can find different individuals. You could see here, we mentioned Deborah Burks earlier. She may also be mentioned inside the contents of emails. If we do this, we'll see search results. There are actually 18 emails within the date of the FOIA, which ended at it starts in January of 2020 and ends at the beginning of May. And then if you scroll down further, you can see, you can actually also too, as a user, download this this metadata, but you can also take a look at 15-minute coronavirus machines, right? And so once you do that, you'll see what happens is you can see the entities that we've identified in the email, the topic words, right? And you also get an email preview. In this case, it's a heavily redacted email. It may go on for a bit. You may find additional information. If you want to see the full information, then you could go to the fuller document on Document Cloud and click that link. It will take you there. So you can see here, look like there might be a duplicate problem. Let's see. Let's actually see if that, I don't think that is actually the case. No, it is two emails on this that have timestamps that are the same time. It's interesting. Okay. And so you can see what you can do with this, and you can, it provides a framework for you to do these in a very reasonable way, right? A very cost-effective way, a kind of a simple way without a huge resource spend. All these tools, right? The use of PDF to Inbox, but also the use of the Document Cloud platform and the excellent API that they provide. The use of Streamlit to build an application, to build a graphical user interface on top of this, and so on. Now, I know I'm getting close to the end of my time, but let me go back and talk about follow-on work. One important thing is that we're expanding this COVID-19 corpus. We've actually, as a follow-on to the grant that we received from EABCC and the Mellon Foundation, we applied for another grant. This one from NHPRC, so NARA's National Historical Publications and Records Commission, and it's a collaboration with the team at Muckrock, and we're actively seeking out submissions now. You may be actually building out your own COVID-19 related archives, but if you're not, or if you have something that is oriented around government records that you think might be appropriate for inclusion in ours, you could certainly direct folks our way. And this link will show you all the process of what someone would need to do if they wanted to make a contribution, right? And that you will be credited for your documents, the people or organizations who submit the documents, right? And also get access to this tool work that we're doing, right? And be able to collaborate more more closely with us. So that's really exciting. The other thing, and this is most of the talks that I've heard today and yesterday, right, have focused so much on PII and privacy concerns. And insofar as, the objectives of what we're trying to do are around making public goods, making things generally available in an open way on the internet for both researchers and the population at large, right? The citizens of the country and really citizens of the world. You really need to be careful. I don't need to say, I mean, it's not ridiculous saying it to this audience, right? Because you know better than I, right? All the issues that can be encountered, right? And again, the Fauci email is, I think, very, very well redacted as part of the FOIA process. And especially when you get down maybe to the state or local level, this will not always be the case. And especially with regards to email addresses and phone numbers. But, even more serious information, occasionally you will find someone has put a credit card number, maybe even their social security number in an email. And certainly all that information needs to be redacted. And if you're going to make something that's a public collection, right, you need to make sure that you not only that you've redacted it, but also that you've not in any way made it, easier for someone to harvest that sort of information, right? And so we've done a lot of work. It wasn't part of the initial grant, but a lot of work more recently on using open source libraries for performing redaction of the key PII elements, right? And so we've used two libraries. One is from the Bank Capital One data profiler. Again, this is open source, even though it's from a commercial entity. And then we've also used something called Common Regex Improve, which our colleagues at Muckrock mentioned to us. For redactions, we use a package called PyMuPDF. And this works well, especially on simpler elements. It's not perfect, so we'll look to continue to improve that. And then for stuff that I'd like to do that's not yet scheduled, right? I think maybe it's an obvious one, and everyone seems to be interested in these days, right? But looking at some way to apply generative AI, right? Some of the libraries that you see from OpenAI, especially on this email parsing and document splitting, to make it more effective more effective in terms of being more robust and being able to handle a very wide range of documents. And also, I would like to evaluate a library from Microsoft for PII detection. So that wraps it up for the slides. Chris, I'll put it back to you. I know it's 3:45. I probably didn't leave much time for questions.
Yeah, we're close, but there are a couple of them in there, which I think you might be able to see. But the first one is, do you plan to make make conversion from EML to EML possible for an individual message in a PDF? And if I can jump in there, I think that relates a little bit less perhaps to your project than it does to the EA PDF project that I'll be talking about tomorrow, where in fact we do plan to embed the spec that is currently drafted has provision to embed an EML file in the PDF. So I think may answer Emmeline's question.
Yeah. Yes, I think for us, the future development will be, because we being the history lab are the primary users of this work to date. The future development will be driven by requirements of the grant work that we're doing. I would be very interested in hearing more details about this. Certainly, if it was not much work to add that format, I've not looked into it, but also too, if it has EA PDF ramifications, it may make sense for us to do so. Right now, I just rely on the libraries that are part of the Python standard libraries for generating the mbox.
Right. Great. Well, thank you again, Ben. I think we are at time here, so we will move in again to another break period and like to welcome everybody back again at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock Central Time here. So again, all of your slides and your work is available online. I was already noodling around a little bit with the prototype interface and find it quite valuable and impressive. So thank you again, Ben, for your time this afternoon.
It's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share the work that we're working on.
Great.
Bye.
Bye now.